it be an official committee meeting to allow recorded discussion, believe it or not, if our colleagues are prepared, because I think this is going to start with some discussion, and although we'd like it to be recorded for history, it may be good just to get started. Is that, or do you want to?
I'm willing to do whatever the chairman wants.
Well, no, it's really up to
we'll have to repeat
Senator Levin and Senator
later.
Coburn.
May I make a suggestion, a totally processed suggestion, because Senator Coburn and I had a opportunity to talk for at least a couple of moments on the way over. I'm not going to repeat anything other than to say that I think that there's a lot of issues that I have with this that can be, I won't say corrected, anyway, that can be addressed in a modified amendment. There may be one or two that can't be, which are then worth debating, I think. But the ones that can be, and I can give some examples, but I'd rather not, because my suggestion is a process suggestion. We have a rule, it's Rule 44 of the Senate. It's a 3-page extensive rule on earmarks, what has to be on your websites, what chairmen have to certify. This is the certification here, the one they use. I was kidding Tom Harkin on the way over. They use the Tom Harkin certification as the example. But I've got to certify certain things as chairman already. I think what Senator Coburn wants mostly, and there may be something beyond it, is that we have one single website for all of the committees to put all of the earmarks together in one place. And I don't have a problem with that. I have a major problem with the 25 additional things that have to be searchable, some of which cannot be searchable, and they define that as being able to aggregate. For instance, if we get 1,000 requests at the Armed Services Committee, I cannot aggregate the things which, these 25 items, you can't aggregate 1,000 different justifications.
Well, you don't have to aggregate anything. That's what the website does. The website will aggregate that for you.
It can't aggregate, it can't put in one numeric way 1,000 different justifications, 1,000 different.
Sure it can.
They're different.
They can still aggregate it to meet the intent of the legislation.
I don't know how you aggregate it in any definition of aggregate, but anyway, that's, I just would suggest strongly that, so we use this time, that if we're not going to get this done today or voted on today, that you ask the Rules Committee, Mr. Chairman, to comment on the substance. Apparently the Rules Committee has commented on cost and on something else that Dr.
The ranking member did, not the Rules Committee per se. The ranking member.
Oh, the ranking member. Oh. I thought you said the Rules.
If I could make a point to my colleague.
Okay.
This bill was assigned to this committee with this committee's jurisdiction.
I understand.
The Rules Committee does not have jurisdiction on this bill.
I know.
This is a transparency bill, and what it says is if you're asking for earmarks and you're getting earmarks, instead of 598 different places that you have to go to the federal government to find out what somebody's doing, you can go to one site and find out what somebody's doing, not only by member of Congress, but by company, by lobbyist, so that we create the transparency that our president asked for. I mean, this is a bill that President Barack Obama asked for. He asked for it.
He did not ask for this bill. He had 6 words in a State of the Union message, or wherever it was, saying that he wants to publish all earmark requests on a single website before there's a vote so the American people can see how their money's being spent. That's fine. Okay? You may want to take the word request literally there, but if you take it literally, you're going to have 1,000 different requests of each committee that are not granted, that are not approved. You'll have a few earmarks that are currently under our earmark rule. The earmarks that are granted must be shown in a very clear way. I agree with Dr. Coburn that we ought to have one searchable website for earmarks. This goes way beyond that. It requires things to be put into there, which I've gone through this with technical people. They cannot be aggregated. You cannot aggregate at least 10 of these items. But may I make a plea? Because if we're not going to get to a vote today, I'm going to do it. You say now that it was the ranking member of Rules that you talked to. Well, that's very different. I think we ought to ask the Rules Committee to comment. We don't have to accept their comments. And by the way, the only reason this goes to the Rules Committee is it's in the form of a statute. And if we're going to start modifying our rules by statute instead of by rule, we're going to have a lot of things that are going to come to this committee that are going to end up being in a real hash on the floor because they belong in the Rules Committee.
That's kind of like PAYGO, huh? It's a statute. That's one of our rules, and we passed it into law.
Did we?
I don't know. We passed it into law. It was signed as a statute. Although
I don't know the history of PAYGO. I do know the history of this rule. This rule is a rule on earmarks. It's an extensive rule. It
is not a rule. It is a...
No, I'm sorry. There is a rule on earmarks.
Yes, this is not a rule.
I know. I'm saying this is a statute. Anyway, I'm going to make a plea, and then I got to go because there's a meeting that I've got to go to at the leader's office with the Russian president. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that there be a request of the Rules Committee to comment on this subject in this bill. It's not a rule, but we have a right to ask them to comment. Believe me, they'll comment sooner or later on this because it effectively amends Rule 44 in a major way. And I agree with the thrust of having one single place where you can go to look for all of the earmarks which members got. I have problems with all the requests having to be there and to be put in a form which cannot practically be done, okay? And so we can debate.
Could I ask my chairman a question?
Yeah, let me first indicate, I'm happy to tell you that council have come together and agreed that this is an official discussion and all of this has been transcribed. So history will have the opportunity to note.
Definitely yielded, Doctor.
I would ask a question. He's my chairman of my committee. We work together great. It's not often that we get in a little toe-to-toe, but we're going to have a toe-to-toe on this one, and so I look forward to it. Would you sit here and say today that the American people should not know of earmarks that are requested, whether they're granted or not?
If there's a practical way of doing it, I would say so, but I also would say that the American people have a right to know of every request for a executive agency grant.
I have no problem with that.
Well, you don't have that in your bill.
Well, I know, but we don't have any control over that.
Oh,
they do.
Yes, we do. We passed a law which says the executive agency has to put certain information out in a searchable way. That's a law. We know every single...
So it's already being done?
No. It's being done not for requests, for the actual grants.
Yeah, I think it ought to be done. I would agree with you. I'll be happy to co-sponsor a separate bill to do that.
Then you will see whether any president would sign a bill which says that every single application for every grant loan has got to be listed. And you've got to put in there the 25 things on every single application for every single grant to every single agency. You're going to bog down this government, I'm telling you, in ways that have not just unforeseen consequences, foreseeable consequences.
Well, when our argument is bogged down versus transparency, put me on the side of transparency every time.
Well, put me on the side of transparency too, but not something which is beyond transparent. It is overwhelming. You won't be able to make any sense out of 10,000 different purposes of grant applications. You can't. All you have
to do is scan the information in, Carl. I've done it 100 times in my businesses and everything else. You can make anything searchable you want to. It's the degree to which you want to make it searchable. And the fact is every application that is made for a earmark in the Defense Authorization Committee or the Defense Appropriation Committee or any other committee, and a tax earmark as well, can be put in. Here's what it is, and then it can, all the backup detail can be scanned. You go right to it.
Well, can you?
And so
you can say that you want to make it possible to have the justification of thousands and tens of thousands of grant applications, all those justifications in a format where you can make those, as you define it, by the way, as you define it, searchable, which in your words, searchable means, if I can find it, the word searchable, it means that, someone help me with that word back here. No, but it's both things.
Searchable means search and aggregate.
Search and aggregate.
Yeah, it's easy. All you do is write a program that says, here's the keyword, it searches for it. Here's the second keyword.
On 100,000.
Well, we're not talking grant applications. This bill is,
you were willing to do that.
But we're talking about this bill. Okay. This bill is about earmarks.
Fine.
This bill, we can do it, we can get it done, we can get it done economically, and the American people can see what we're doing.
I'm all in favor of that. I'm not in favor of putting together something which is totally unworkable so the American people, instead of seeing something useful, will see applications which have purposes which cannot be aggregated. You cannot aggregate 1,000 purposes for applications for earmarks coming to a committee. You can't do it.
I would just defer to my chairman that may be true, but the Sergeant of Arms, who is going to implement this and implements everything else, gave us this language saying this is what they need to accomplish this.
Fine, then let me talk.
So the language is such that they think they can accomplish it with the language as it's written.
Good. Let's get a. Oh, good. Well, Sergeant. Well, I don't know if we want to ask the Sergeant at Arms, who's here apparently, but I'm happy to do it. Turn this into a hearing. I got to leave in 5-10 minutes. I would, since we're not going to vote on this apparently.
It's pretty obvious we're not going to get the 9 to have a vote.
I will request that I'm going to make a request that we ask the Sergeant at Arms to give us a letter as to whether it's practical to make all of this.
They've given us that already.
Okay, that's fine. To give us a letter saying that all of this can be aggregated. You can aggregate all this. Dr. Coburn said that he'd be willing to apply this to the executive branch, and then we could.
I said I'd be willing to write another bill with you to do that.
Okay. Anyway, if we're not voting today, my other request is that we ask the Rules Committee to comment on this bill between now and the time of the next hearing. Mark.
Fine. I'm prepared to do that, and we'll put this bill, if not at the top, then toward the top of the agenda in our July markup. Do you want to ask anything?
No, I'm fine with it. I think I would just say, with all deference to my chairman, and I know he has a tough job as head of the Armed Services Committee.
Right.
This is something the American people aren't going to stand for us not to do.
There's no question that
we're going to do it.
The people want the goal, and I guess he's asking about the methods used in this bill. And this is a bipartisan bill.
Yes, it is. We have. I guess 25 co-sponsors in the Senate, 10 of which are on this committee. It's bipartisan. Understanding what we're trying to do. If we need to tweak the language to make it better for the Sergeant of Arms, to make it more easily searchable.
Aggregatable.
And either way. But we have a letter from them right here from June 22nd, which we've pretty well been complicit with. That we will tend to meet that. But this is something that isn't going to go away, and the sooner we get it taken care of and are completely transparent with the American people, the sooner the confidence in this body is going to rise.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just finally, I'm all for transparency. If you look at the website of the Armed Services Committee, you'll see that we go beyond what the rule requires in terms of transparency. I happen to agree with making all of the committees' websites put together into one website. I think that is the stated purpose of this. I'm all for doing that. It's when you go beyond that, as I've tried to discuss here, that you get into problems not of something becoming transparent, but something coming that will collapse on its own weight. It is so overwhelmingly complex that I think you cannot do it the way this bill describes it. But the transparency goal, I agree with Dr. Coburn. He's been a leader in this effort, and I've joined and supported much of what he's done. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Well, I hope the two of you will continue to meet and reason together from now to our next markup. And if not, I look forward to the next markup with excitement already, because the debate has been very passionate and high quality.
Let me just enter into the record one quote from the Sergeant of Arms. Although this is a complex technical system with several broadly defined requirements, it is technically feasible to implement the requirements of S.3335. And compared to all the other things this government does in terms of integrating complex systems, this is a piece of cake.
Got you. Okay, Senator Collins, you want to add anything? Yes, I agree. It
is ironic we can pass a cybersecurity bill, but we can't pass transparency for the American people on earmarks.
I hope we can work this out. If not, we'll definitely bring it to a vote at the next meeting, and I would guess the votes are there to pass it. Without objection, we'll authorize majority and minority staff of the committee by mutual agreement to make whatever technical and conforming changes are necessary to the measures we've reported out today. I thank the members, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks for your leadership.
Well,